I could have given this more than 5 stars, I would have. This is like 5 Michelin stars, bitch. Like, it's so good. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name's Paige and today I'm going to do my October wrap up. So if any of you were, paying attention to my channel, you will have seen that there wasn't a September wrap up, which was a shame because wrap ups are one of my favourite videos to film. But the tea is that I didn't finish a single book in September. I don't know what happened. So there wasn't a September wrap up, which I was pretty bummed about. However, I think I've more than made up for it in October. So in the month of October I read 15 books, which I think is my highest, so go me. That won't last going into November, I can tell you that for free. And I actually had like a very solid month, not just in terms of the fact that I read 15 books, but in the fact that most of these were like 4 or 5 star reads. I had a really good month. If, something made you click on this video or you've seen some of my other videos, you may as well subscribe and let me know down below because I'm always interested to meet new people. It's always fun to hear different opinions, so do let me know and subscribe because if you like this one, you'll probably like the others, which you may as well go and check out, by the way. You could do that if you wanted to. Let's get into the books that I read in October, because this is going to be a long one. The first book that I read in the month of October was The Secret History by Donna Tartt. This is like very dark academia, eerie vibes. It really does pull you in from the beginning. This has one of the most intriguing first chapters ever. I do think there were times when it dragged on a bit. This is a really long book. It's deceptively large. This looks like just a standard normal size book. It's over 600 pages. So given I wasn't prepared for that, I felt like there were times when it did drag on. For the most part, so interesting. So if you're unaware, I feel like everyone talks about this book, but if you are unaware, this is about our main character and he goes to a university on the East Coast, this like very cutesy little East Coast town, and he's studying classics and they have like a very like kooky teacher who only takes in a certain group of people to study classics every year. It's very like Dead Poet Society in that aspect. I was a bit disappointed that this like teacher figure didn't have a bigger role. Through the pursuit of like classical knowledge, this group of students find themselves in like a murder mystery-esque type deal. So this completely blew me away. I loved this. I can't quite remember if I gave it a 4 or 5 stars. I may have knocked it down to a 4 because it dragged, but in my head it was good enough for 5, so I really do recommend this one. Following on from The Secret History, I read Northanger Abbey by Jane Austen. This I picked up because I wanted something spooky and gothic because it was October. You'll see the theme for most of these books. This was like floating around the outskirts when I studied gothic literature at A-level English. It was one that we like talked about and brought in a lot but never actually read. So I picked this up. Catherine Morland might be one of the best characters that Jane Austen has ever written. That's probably a very unpopular opinion, but I just found her so intriguing and down to earth and relatable. I really liked her. This is kind of like a spoof of a gothic, and that definitely came through. I only ended up giving this 3 stars because I didn't think there were enough gothic elements, and it had a happy ending. There was something about this that just didn't quite hit the spot for me. I might give it another go some other time, but yeah, this wasn't as gothic as I was expecting and wasn't really what I was looking for. Next we have The Year of the Witching by Alexis Henderson. This is one that I picked up because I've seen a lot of people on BookTube talking about it and it's been on my TBR for ages, so I finally was like, it's October, let's get to it. I loved this because it is very much a critique of religion, which is one of my favourite things to critique. It was just such an interesting exploration of this like deeply religious and suspicious society in relation to how they view women. It was definitely a feminist story. In this book we have our main character Emmanuelle, and she is kind of living under the burden of the fact that her mother ran away and lived with witches for some time. There's like a real dark magic in this book. It is definitely not like your light and fluffy witches. It is a dark book. Really interesting to read, and this was exactly what I was looking for in the month of October. I will have to say this does have some content warnings. There is some discussion of abuse, both sexual and physical, so do be careful when going into this book, but I just found the general exploration of religion and like extremism so interesting, so 5 out of 5 for that. The next book that I read this month is actually interesting because it's The Three-Body Problem, and I read this for my science fiction and global literature class, which I'm taking as an elective this year. I enjoyed this more than I thought I would, given science fiction isn't something I generally read. However, there were times when it was just really confusing, and multiple times I had to go to class and be like, hey, what am I missing here? Because it jumps around temporally and geographically so much. and I guess like that's supposed to, and it's fine, but I just personally found it quite confusing. I also found the names confusing, but I think that's just me being quite ethnocentric and not being used to Eastern names, so definitely on me, not on this book. I would just get confused between people sometimes. I'm gonna have to reread this anyway before I write the essay on it, so I'll let you know my thoughts at a later date, but generally plot-wise really enjoyed this one. As you're probably learning, I really like books that offer some kind of critique of society, hence why fantasy and sci-fi are kind of genres that I lean towards, and this definitely offered that, so I can't complain. The next book that I read is The Governess Game by Tessa. I read this as an ebook, so I don't have a hard copy to show you. This book was enjoyable. I didn't find it as captivating as the first book in this series. The relationship just didn't really draw me in, and I found Chase, our male love interest, to be quite annoying and just generally like very repetitive. It was still like a very quick, enjoyable read. I think I read it in a day or 2 days. It was good. It hit the spot. It was what I was looking for. I wanted something cheesy and romantic and rubbish, and that was that. So I can't really complain, but just in general it wasn't as good as the other Tessa that I've read. I next read Everwish by Amelia Oz. I ended up giving Everwish 3 stars. I found that there was a really interesting discussion of kinship throughout this book and a very cool found family element, so if you like a paranormal romance with found family, definitely check this book out. I think it will be for you. This book basically follows our main character Stella, and she's been cursed, and every woman in her family has been cursed, that every woman before the age of 21 will fall in love, produce a child, and then die. So this is kind of about her discovering this curse and then trying to like get around it, but also meeting, of course, a very sexy love interest who is a paranormal creature, and just her discovery of this paranormal world alongside the one that she lives in. I just felt that this book was very much just to set up the series. I didn't really feel like much excitement happened, but you can definitely see that you're just getting into it. There is so much world building, which I think will be of great value to this series as the books move on, and I do plan to continue reading this series. So even though I only give it a 3 star and it doesn't sound too positive, I'm feeling very positive about where it's going, and I'm interested to keep reading. So I also have another NetGalley read, which was Black Witch Magic by Mila. You can tell that I was very interested in a witch theme this month. This book I really enjoyed. I do feel like it had some like cringy elements. It was saying things like "you slay" and just a lot of modern colloquialisms and slang and stuff like that, and I personally just don't really like to read that in my books. I feel like it loses that escapism for me, and I just find it cringy. It's just a bit cringy to read outdated slang. Black Witch Magic is another book about a witch who is cursed, and she's cursed so that she can never leave her town. She meets a male protagonist who is like a supernatural like hunter type person, and he has a TV show. He has come to town to try and like out her grandmother, so they have that kind of like conflict there. There are some very interesting relationship dynamics in this book. Every side character in this book is horrible. Literally Noelle sees her friend is hurt and literally says, "I told you so." Like, who does that when their friend is genuinely upset? And then our male protagonist friends gets genuinely mad at him that he's like going and dating this girl that this guy doesn't want him to date. I found that quite annoying. I don't like it when characters are just mean for the sake of being mean. However, in general, really enjoyed this book. I think I gave it a 4 stars, and I definitely gave it a very positive review on Goodreads. If you want to check out my Goodreads, a link is down in the description where it always is. Definitely enjoyed that one. It was exactly the light-hearted like witchy bitch thing that I was looking for. There were some very funny scenes that I genuinely still laugh out loud at when I think about them. The next books that I read this month are the Miss Peregrine series. If you guys didn't see my reading Miss Peregrine in 24 hours video, go and check that out. I'm not going to do like a full review here because I already did it in that video and you may have already seen it, and if you haven't you can just go click on it. So I have these 4 in hard copy, and then I have the 5th one on audiobook. If you guys saw that video then you'll know how difficult it was for me to track down all of these books and how everything went wrong. So yeah, I pretty much gave these like a 3 star overall. They varied between a 3 and a 4 star. Just go check out that video if you want my thoughts. I also vlogged my reading of this one, so you can go check that out if you want to see me literally cry and simp over Henry for like 15 minutes. Just broke my heart in the best way. I'm genuinely tearing up just thinking about it. So if you've been living under a rock and you haven't heard someone talking about Addie LaRue, this is a book about a main character, Addie LaRue, and in the 1700s, I believe, she makes a deal with the devil that kind of results in her being immortal, but there's a catch, and the catch is that absolutely no one remembers her. And so she's been alive for 300 years. She's living now in 2014 New York City. She walks into a bookshop one day, and our main character Henry remembers her from when she visited the day before, and he is the first person in 300 years to remember her. It just made me cry so much. I loved it. I can't wait till I like forget details so I can reread it, because it just, I'm sorry, but not many books will make me cry after the fact, and here I am like tearing up again. If I could have given this more than 5 stars, I would have. This is like 5 Michelin stars, bitch. Like, it was so good. Oh, it hurts me how good this book was. If you haven't read this yet and you want to take anything away from this wrap up, it needs to be this one. And so I also read a third ebook, and that was Secrets of the Starcrossed. This book really intrigued me when I saw it on NetGalley, and I didn't expect to be given a copy of it, but I was, thankfully. It's kind of set in a dystopian world where the Roman Empire never fell. And this intersection between Roman architecture, culture, myth, and modernity is really interesting to see. And the author has constructed an entire alternative history for this book that's so much world building, so much work went into this, and I was absolutely blown away by it. It was another romance where I just could not stop rooting for it, and I cannot wait for the second book. I want it so badly. I need to know what happens. There was a major cliffhanger, and I ended up giving this 5 stars. My one like tiny critique, which it happened so many times that I'm starting to think it was intentional because it was so obvious that surely an editor couldn't have missed it. Our characters kept saying like, oh, to Hades, or like, oh my lord Hades or something, but this is set in a Roman world, so it should have been Pluto, not Hades, and that really irked me, especially because anytime they mentioned any other kind of god or deity, they did use the Roman, like they referred to Diana rather than Artemis. They did do it at other times, so I was very confused on the Hades point, and it wasn't like it just happened once, so I started to wonder if it was intentional. But I just absolutely loved this. It was a huge critique of the surveillance state, especially in relation to like shopping and stuff like that, and it was just such an interesting plot. It was somehow a romance, a dystopian, and a fantasy all in one, and it brought those elements together so wonderfully, and it really worked. And I am on the lookout for when the second book is released. I cannot wait. And the final book that I read in the month of October was Practical Magic by Alice Hoffman. This was kind of a giant letdown. I've had this book for weeks and I've been saving it. I wanted to read it over Halloween, so I was saving it for so long, and then I started reading it and nothing happens. Like, there's no real plot. So the basis of this book is that you have 2 sisters, Sally and Gillian, and they are witches and they are kind of cursed. Well, in the film it's explicitly said that they're cursed so that whenever they fall in love with a male, he will die. It's not really explicitly said in the book. Nothing is really explicitly said in the book. They're not explicitly witches, they're not explicitly cursed. Weird stuff just seems to happen to them. And this is kind of one of those rare instances where the movie is so much better than the book. And I'm sorry if you love this. The 2 sisters are kind of characterized very differently. You have Sally, who is the older sister, and she very much is like living a settled down, small town New England life. She's got 2 young girls. She like rarely falls in love. And then Gillian is characterized as someone who falls in love too often and flits from guy to guy, city to city, and doesn't ever really settle down. And then there's this huge big event that brings them back together. All kinds of chaos ensues. However, they're not brought back together until the last like quarter of this book. The first 3 quarters is just backstory, and we literally see the 2 sisters age from young children through to like middle-aged adults in the space of like 300 pages. It's just too much. There's no distinct plot, and it was disappointing. I'm sorry, it really was. Considering I was waiting for weeks to read this, it let me down. Okay. Here is the full pile of books that I read this month. There is not 15 here, but obviously you saw I read quite a few as ebook formats this month. All in all, it was a very solid month. Nothing really lower than a 3-star, and most things were 4 or 5 stars, so I can't complain. It was a good month. November is not going to be the same. Do not be expecting me to read 15 books in the month of November, because your girl has deadlines in November. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you guys read any of these books this month, or just in general if you've read any of them, do let me know down below. especially practical magic, because I want to know if that's just me. Do check out some of the other videos that I've mentioned in this wrap up if you want like full reviews of Addie, LaRue and Miss Peregrine. I know everyone's kind of read them and you're probably bored of hearing about them, so fair enough, but you can go check them out just in case. Thank you very much for watching. Do like and subscribe if you're new here and you want to stick around, it would be so appreciated, and I will see you on Friday for my next video. Bye guys.